You ever stumble upon one of those really strange ancient myths that just sticks with you? In alchemy, there's this recurring story about the death and rebirth of a king. Now, on the surface, it just sounds like a bizarre old fairy tale. But for the psychologist Carl Jung, this was anything but a simple story. He saw it as something way more profound, a symbolic map of the human mind.
Okay, so let's get right into this. Jung is telling us that the king isn't some literal guy with a crown. No, he's a carrier of a myth, a powerful symbol that bubbles up from what Jung called the collective unconscious. Think of the king as a ruling principle, a dominant idea, really the center of our conscious world.
So to really get this, we're going to follow the alchemist's own map. We'll start with the problem, the fading king. Then we'll explore their, let's say, radical cure, which involves a descent into total dissolution. But that leads to the incredible rebirth of the royal pair. And finally, we'll connect all the dots and see how this ancient map is still unbelievably relevant for us today.
Right, so every major transformation has to start with a crisis. And for the alchemists, that crisis was the fading king. This is their powerful symbol for what happens when a dominant part of our personality, a worldview we've relied on for years, starts to get old, rigid, and just sick. You see, the king embodies this huge contradiction. On one hand, he's supposed to be divine, the source of life and prosperity for his whole kingdom. But on the other hand, he's sick. He's barren, sterile, impotent. The alchemists even had this incredible term for him, dropsical, which means he's literally drowning from the inside out. This paradox, this internal crisis, is what kicks the whole process into gear. And this isn't just an abstract idea. This 15th century alchemical text actually gives the king a voice to express his own despair. He's asking, why am I even a king? I can't create anything. I have no issue. He has all this power, but it's become sterile, meaningless. And that's the exact problem that alchemy is trying to solve. So how in the world do you cure a dying king who's drowning from within? Well, alchemy's answer is pretty shocking. The goal isn't just to patch him up. It's to guide him through a complete, total journey of death and rebirth. There's this wild medieval story, the allegory of Merlin, that lays out the whole grisly process. A thirsty king drinks some special water, and he gets terribly sick. He feels like he's falling apart. The physicians then put him in a heated chamber where he dies. But it doesn't stop there. They dismember his body, grind it into a powder, and after a second death, he's brought back to life. Not just healed, but way more powerful than he ever was before. Now, the absolute key to this whole thing is that alchemical water, the aqua permanens. And just listen to the paradox here. It kills and vivifies. It both kills and gives life. The very thing that overwhelms and dissolves the old king is also the source of his renewal. It's a core concept, really, the idea that the thing that breaks you down is often the very thing that can build you back up, completely new. So this brings us to what is, without a doubt, the most difficult and critical phase of the work, the descent into dissolution. This is the darkness before the dawn. It's the complete, total breakdown of the old form. This quote, wow, it just perfectly captures the feeling of this stage. I stick fast in the mire of the deep. This is the experience of what the alchemists called the negrito, the blackening. It's that state of absolute chaos, of despair, of feeling completely and utterly lost in the dark. The alchemists called this stage the solutio, or dissolution. And this is where Jung's genius really shines. He saw that this wasn't about chemistry. It was profoundly psychological. The solutio is the solution to our inner conflicts, a solution that can only come from deep self-knowledge, from letting the rigid, hard shell of the ego dissolve. What's happening here is a deliberate return to the prima materia, the primordial, chaotic soup of pure potential. It's like you have to take a Lego castle completely apart, down to the individual bricks, before you can build something new, something stronger and better than before. But then, out of that intense, absolute darkness, a miracle happens. This is where the rebirth begins, a stunning, unbelievable transformation from the total blackness of dissolution to 1,000 brilliant colors. The alchemists had this absolutely beautiful symbol for this turning point. Just when the process seems at its darkest, its most hopeless, a flash of iridescent color appears in their flask.
They called this amazing moment the peacock's tail.
And the symbolism of the cauda pavonis, the peacock's tail, is just so rich. It's a sign of hope, an omen of rebirth, kind of like a rainbow after a brutal storm. Seeing all colors emerge from the blackness means that all our different, conflicting inner qualities are starting to integrate. This beautiful spectrum of color is the signal that they're about to unify into what the alchemists called the albedo, a state of pure, whitened wholeness.
The alchemist George Ripley put this transformation so poetically. He said, "From a square, the bed a globe is made." Just picture that for a second. The imperfect, conflicted square, which for them represented the four warring elements, is transformed into the perfect, unified circle, the globe. This is a symbol for achieving psychic wholeness, what Jung would later call the self.
And this line here, it's the grand finale. The king isn't just back to normal. He's elevated to a divine state, crowned him in glory, equal with the sun. He's become something entirely new, incorruptible, whole, and radiant. Okay, so that was a wild journey, right? Ancient kings, magical water, peacock's tails. But what on earth does this beautiful, strange, ancient myth mean for us, right here, right now? Well, that brings us to our final and I think most important section. I mean, that's the real question, isn't it? How do we take this from a 15th century alchemical recipe and turn it into a practical tool for understanding our own lives? The answer is actually incredibly simple, but it's also incredibly profound. The king is a symbol for our consciousness, our dominant way of looking at the world. So his journey of renewal, that's a map for our own psychological transformation. So let's just break it down. That king is our own ruling worldview. And when that attitude gets old, rigid, sterile, it needs to be renewed. But that renewal isn't just a small change. It demands a scary descent into the unconscious, a real confrontation with our shadow, and a willingness to let our old certainties completely dissolve. And the result? It's not about going back to who you were. It's about creating a new, more integrated personality, what the alchemist called the philosopher's stone, and what Jung called the self. So I'll leave you with this final thought to really chew on. If the king is your consciousness, your dominant way of being in the world, maybe ask yourself, is it aging? Is it becoming a little sterile? And if it is, what would its renewal even look like?